The first Dawntrail Extreme was an absolute joy to progress, and for those of you still looking to do it yourself, I hope this guide will be of some use to you. Valigarmanda Extreme will drop item level 710 weapons upon completion, which as of the time of recording are the strongest weapons that you can get in the game. The mount drop is also insanely cool, so I can imagine you, like me, will be motivated to farm for it a bunch. As a note, I'm making this guide after getting around 10 clears myself. I've seen every mechanic a lot and how to deal with them easily, but over the coming weeks we may see new strats start to take over. Firstly, you'll want to assign light parties of 4, each with a tank, healer and 2 DPS, and then you'll also want pairs with a support and DPS in each. I prefer to put the melee and tanks together and the ranged and healers, but your mileage may vary, you can do what you want. Assign them left or right, and in the case of the pairs, both left and right, and north and south. Valigarmanda opens up with Spikecycle. This mechanic is simple, telegraphing a number of curved lines one after another, which will then go off in sequence as AoEs, dropping ice tombs which will explode after a period of time. If you get hit, you're going to get a damage down and lose a chunk of your HP. To solve this, look for the first line to go out, and then go to the opposite side of the room. There will always be one line on one side, and then a bunch on the other side, so you want to position yourself behind the first line of that bunch. Then as the line AoEs themselves start shooting, follow them, staying close to the middle of the room. You'll go about 2/3 of the way across the room, then turn back on yourself and go back a bit as the last few resolve. If you watch my pathing here, you can always follow this, even with cast bars. The pattern is always the same, it just starts on either left or right at random. Skyruin comes next, and throughout the fight you're going to see 3 Skyruins in total, and these will each signify phase changes. Skyruin is a raid-wide damage which also applies a damage over time to the party for 12 seconds. This Skyruin is always fire. When they aren't fixed, I'll make a note for you. Tri-Scourge will follow this, inflicting heavy damage and also providing you with 3 debuffs. For now, don't worry too much about it. The next thing you'll see is a duty pop up to tell you that a volcanic eruption is imminent. Look to the left or right side and you'll see volcanoes, and check which one looks ready to blow. Move to the opposite side of the room away from it, and avoid the small AoE puddles that drop under players afterwards. One thing to note is that volcanic eruption is persistent for a few seconds, so don't immediately run back into it when it executes. Then Valigarmanda will pop up with a brand new duty message and begin to telegraph one of 3 attacks. If he mentions tempestuous winds and begins to spin, it is a donut AoE, so you want to be in the middle. If it mentions its wide open beak, it means the far left and right corners at the front are safe from the huge incoming cleave. If he gathers his strength and climbs onto the arena a little, it's out. The out is pretty big as well, so don't greed up time on it unless you have a lot of confidence. All of these mechanics are followed immediately by 2-player pair stacks, so you need to go into your front back and left right pairs as you avoid these attacks. Now is when your Tri-Scourge debuffs come into play, so we will cover them real quick. All players will have lightning, which is spread. They will also have ice, which is keep moving. If you fail to keep moving here, you will be jailed in an ice tomb which can be broken by other party members, and you'll take damage over time while you're inside it. Lastly, those fire debuffs at the end, which will target both healers, are light party stacks. The ices will be on 2 different timers, one which started at around 30 seconds and another that's over a minute. Supports will get 1 timer and DPS will get the other at random. After the previous mechanic, the lower timer ice will go off, so either supports or DPS need to keep moving. The other timers will go off a bit later. Mountain Fire is next. This spawns a tower in the front middle of the arena, which is intended to be taken by a tank with cooldowns, but there's a twist. The boss will blast the tower, causing a huge cleave of fire to go off, with the safe spot being directly behind the tower, with it drawing a straight line between you and the boss. This tower soak is a tank buster and will apply a short fire resist down and dot when taken. This will happen 6 times in total, with Valigarmanda pivoting and changing angle for each hit, and the tanks needing to swap places with one another in the tower after each hit, cycling their cooldowns to protect themselves and the party. After the 6th hit, those fire debuff light stacks from Tri-Scourge will go off, so group up on the left and right of the middle of the room and heavily mitigate. With each hit, a fire puddle will drop for a total of 3. Follow the edge of the boss's hitbox, then dip into the center of the room after the 3rd. They leave really quickly, so don't worry about the puddles. Finally, the other set of 4 ices will go off, so those leftover players need to keep moving to stay unscathed. This will be followed by a second volcanic eruption and a second telegraphed and duty message AoE from the boss. Remember, the 3 possibilities are center, front sides, or out, and you'll once more need to group up in your pairs on the left and right sides respectively to take the stacks that follow. Those thunder debuffs will go off afterwards, so spread. Because there is so much space, you don't really need to set positions for this. The melee and tanks can go somewhere inside the hitbox, and the healers and ranged can be back a little. Otherwise, just kinda do whatever and it works out fine. Disaster Zone ends the phase, dealing damage and returning the arena to its original state. Ruin Foretold comes next, hurting the raid, and this also marks the start of the add phase of the fight. 3 elemental beacons will spawn, one on the left, one on the right, and one in the middle of the room. You need to kill these before the ruinous power gauge reaches 100, or you wipe. Split into your left and right light parties once more, focusing initially on the west and east beacons respectively. Line stacks will appear on either the healers or tanks, and the boss will telegraph conal AoEs to avoid at the same time. These line stacks are wild charges, so you need the tanks to stand at the front as the first person in the line will receive increased damage. Shimmy left and right, healing through the damage and killing the beacons, and when your beacon has been taken out, shift over to the middle and work on that one. Once all 3 have been defeated, Valigarmanda will immediately become targetable once more and begin to cast Tully Disaster, a 3-hit raid-wise cycling through the 3 elements that your foe uses, the final of which applies Perpetual Conflagration, a damage over time effect that will persist for the rest of the encounter. It doesn't hit too hard, it's about 4,000 or 5,000 damage per tick, but it is enough to chip away at shields and keep you on your toes. Next will come another Skyruin, but it could be either Storm Skyruin or Blizzard Skyruin at random. Pay attention to the growing elemental beacon at the front to easily know which it is, or watch the element of the dot you take after Skyruin goes off, as it's going to correspond with the phase. I'm going to explain Skyruin Storm first, then Blizzard, but bear in mind they could happen in the opposite order. Once Skyruin goes off, the arena will change, and this will be followed by another Tri-Scourge that will apply new debuffs. Each player will have a lightning spread debuff, an ice debuff, and the healers will once more have those light party stack debuffs. The ice and lightnings have different timers once more, split up by supports and DPS. Each player will have one sub 1 minute debuff, and then one debuff that's longer than a minute long. The floor has changed to a 3x4 tiled pattern, which the 4 corners and the 2 middle tiles also have a glowy effect. When you stand on these glowy tiles, you will be raised up above the floor, floating, and you'll need to make use of these to resolve the upcoming mechanics. The light party stacks will go off first, so get in your groups and mitigate. Bear in mind these only hit once, as the element being buffed is no longer fire, so they've lost a lot of their edge. Hail of Feathers is next, telegraphing a proximity AoE on either the middle left or middle right side of the room, and then one by one more appear one after another, heading around the back of the room and towards the other side on the non-glowy tiles. They'll eventually go around every single non-glowy tile for 6 in total. Stand opposite the first one, and as it hits, begin to rotate around the front of the arena to the other side, making sure to give the proximity explosions a wide berth. You'll notice as you're doing so, the proximity hits are actually dropping these Feathers of Ruin adds into the room. When you reach the first hit, which will be on the opposite side of where your group started, begin attacking it. You can stay in this quadrant for the remainder of the AoE damages, but make sure to dip out to max melee range, or if you want to be safe, a little beyond, for the final 2 proximity AoEs that are in the front of the arena, because they can hit quite hard if mitigation isn't on point. When Blighted Bolt goes off after all this, all feathers will explode and the glowing platforms will temporarily become death zones. This means that your one safe square is the one where you hopefully just finished killing the feather. Following all of this, your first debuffs will be around 10 seconds away from expiring. Thunders will need to spread and stay on the floor, and ices will need to spread and go up in the air on a glowy tile. If the ices aren't in the air, they will be ice tombed, and if they are too close to one another, the ice tombs will tether. You can use your pre-assigned corners based on your pairs for this, putting an ice in each corner and have the lightning spread in the adjacent tiles to them. Because you always have an excess of safe tiles for both roles here, you can deviate from these base rules based on recovery, uptime, or convenience purposes once you're confident, but these guidelines give you a foundation to work off. Do note that the thunder spreads are a decent bit larger than they were previously, because thunder is the currently buffed element. They're also going to get a short electrocution dot afterwards. Following this, Valigarmanda will use one of its 3 duty telegraphs again, in, out, or front and sides. There's no need to split into light parties or pairs for this one, just get to a safe spot. As the AoE from the boss goes off, move immediately, as each player will drop a lightning puddle directly underneath their current position, which will explode a few seconds later. If you are at the front or back, you can move towards the middle, and if you're at the middle, you can move to the not middle. Thunderous Breath happens next. This lightning attack will cover the entire floor, so you need to be up in the air to survive. Thunder Beams will spawn on the left and right side of the arena too, leaving only one row the size of half of a square safe. Find the safe row and get in the air on it. After this, the second ice and lightnings will resolve, so deal with these in the exact same way you did with the previous ones. This is followed by another telegraphed boss AoE with the same lightning puddles afterwards to avoid and then move to complete it successfully. That's the end of Storm Skyruin, and the Disaster Zone raid hit will revert the arena and complete the phase. After this phase, you'll need to deal with Ruinfall, which begins a 2-tank share tower in the middle of the room, and they'll need to use defensives on it. AoEs will telegraph at the back of the arena, and a knockback will go off shortly afterwards. You can either run to the front and line yourself up to not be knocked into an AoE, or you can use a prevention like Shorecast or Arm's Length to avoid this. That's the end of one complete cycle. For the Blizzard Skyruin, the arena once more will change, and the following Tri-Scourge will apply new debuffs. This time it will put Firelight party stacks on the healers, Ice debuffs on the tanks, and Lightning spreads on every player. These new enhanced Ice debuffs are busters which go off for huge circle AoEs. Have the tanks run to the northwest and northeast of the room to take these, and then the remaining 6 players will collect into their normal light party stacks in normal positions, just missing one guy in each. The fire and ice will resolve at the same time, and as long as you mitigated enough, everyone will be just fine. After this, you'll get the duty pop-up that a rumbling avalanche is approaching from a specific direction, either the southeast or southwest. You can use this tell, or you can look around and find the arrows yourself to see where the avalanche is coming from. Get out of its path, and at the same time the boss will do one of its special AoEs that you're probably very aware of at this point, so dodge both at the same time. Following this, a number of arcane spheres will appear, shooting line AoEs from each of them and covering most of the arena in the bad. Finding the safe spot here is actually exceptionally easy. You're always going to see 3 spheres clumped up on the front half of one side of the arena, and on the other side there will be one all on its own. Always go to the one on its own immediately, standing in the safe spot on the intercardinal between it and the sphere at the front. So literally just look for the one, then go in between it and the front one, and you're basically directly on top of the safe spot. There's also a bit of time to make small adjustments if you need to as well. 4 lightning spreads will go off after this, so just have them move away from the rest of the group to take their individual hits. Spikecycle from the start of the fight will occur once again, and it operates in the exact same way as it did before, and you can deal with it in a very similar fashion this time around as well. The twist is that during the second half of the dodges, another avalanche will go off from either the southwest or southeast, reducing the safe space and sometimes requiring you to shift your trajectory a little early. Honestly, I didn't feel like I ever had to change too much to my strategy here, just occasionally I needed to move a bit faster. You'll then need to deal with one of Valigarmanda's 3 possible AoEs, followed by another identical set of arcane spheres to avoid, followed by one last avalanche. Coming after all of this is freezing dust, and you'll need to keep moving for this to avoid being frozen solid. Then the other 4 lightning spreads will resolve shortly afterwards. Disaster Zone comes up after this, reverting the arena back to normal. This Skyruin is followed by Ice Talon, which are simple tank busters on each tank. That completes the phase. After you've completed both Skyruins successfully, Wrath Unfurled will cast for heavy raid damage. Mountain Fire will repeat, which is the tank tower where the group needs to line of sight behind it. This will then be followed by Thule Disaster once more, which is 3 raid hits one after another, but this time the final hit will result in an instant group wipe due to Enrage. So to reiterate the order of mechanics, you'll do Spikecycle into Skyruin Fire, then add phase, then either Skyruin Storm or Blizzard, then the other one, then Unfurled Fury into Enrage. Honestly, this fight has a very lenient DPS check, and on my first clear we barely saw the end of the second Skyruin before it died, even with multiple player deaths, damage downs and low gear, so don't worry too much about it. We kept an almost dead run going just so we could see what actually happened on Enrage for footage for this video. I honestly love this fight a lot, and I can't wait to get back in and do it some more on other roles. If you have any questions about the mechanics, please do let me know in the comment section and I will do my best to answer you. And otherwise, thank you so much for watching. Hope you have a fantastic rest of your day.